These happen to be U.S. military ones, but here in Miami, we do a lot of things with FIU and University of Miami and others. And of course, our intelligence agencies are with us as well. And to think about kind of, where our business is, these are our responses to disaster response just in the last 18 months or so. Haiti, of course, being the largest. Poor Guatemala, you remember a couple of months ago, got a volcano and a tropical storm sort of in the same week. And Chile, the huge earthquake in Chile in February. And this is an interesting contrast. As many of you probably know, the Chilean earthquake was actually much more powerful geologically than Haiti, but of course much less damage, much less loss of life, and much less need for U.S. help in response. Now, and of course the main difference is Chile being perhaps the wealthiest country in Latin America, Haiti the poorest, but it really was a sharp contrast. In other words, you're in a place like Chile, if you've got good building codes, if you've got a government that can respond, you can respond pretty well on your own. In fact, Southern Command only sent the 2 C-130 aircraft for about a week to help them ferry goods into the area, whereas our response to Haiti had to be absolutely massive. And indeed, even what we call exercises, like Beyond the Horizons and New Horizons, are really kind of humanitarian missions because they always leave behind things like small schools, small clinics, wells, operation centers, hurricane-proof warehouses, our medical programs, our medical exercises, both real big ones like you see with the hospital ship and now with the Iwo Jima in Haiti and the Caribbean the rest of the year. These folks treat, like over 100,000 people a year, okay, in Latin America on these missions, very often small, very often into remote areas. So it really is something we do every day. And in fact, if you sort of try to take a look at the totality of what we do, and this is it's hard to get your arms around all this, believe me, it's hard for me to do it, and I've been there for 2 years. But just to point out, humanitarian assistance events, 364, international armaments cooperation, 0, so the vast bulk of that sort of stuff that we do really is on kind of the softer side, the exercise side, the humanitarian side of the U.S. military. To think a little bit about Haiti, and I know Helen's probably getting ready to wave her piece of paper. Very quickly, we all know that Haiti, of course, was a poor, difficult place before that earthquake in terms of infant mortality and so forth. The huge human toll of dead and injured. Huge amount of infrastructure destroyed. And this is something I point out to people. The Haitian government's really been criticized for not acting sort of more efficiently, but indeed 13 or 15 of their government ministries were destroyed. So it was really hard for them to work quickly. But in terms of our response, there are some things to note. One, the fact that we saw ourselves as supporting the primary U.S. government effort and lead agency, which is AID. This is Dr. Shaw, the head of the Agency for International Development. That's my boss, General Fraser, who happened to be in Washington the day of the earthquake. And the next morning at the first press conference, he's standing behind, okay? This is General Keane, my colleague, a military deputy of Southern Command, who went down to head that task force. But he is working very closely with General Peixoto, the Brazilian general who was head of MINUSTA. But in fact, they'd known each other because they trained together 3 times during their career. So sometimes this kind of engagement pays really unexpected dividends. The ability of General Keane to work with the U.S. Ambassador, Ken Merton, and the President and Prime Minister of Haiti. The ability of our Coast Guard to work with MINUSTA. These are some peacekeepers in Haiti who happen to be from Sri Lanka. Okay, an enormously global response. Indeed, I think what we do and what we did in Haiti really emphasizes the need for coordination and collaboration with our embassies, with NGOs, with the UN, with other nations in very important ways. And of course, we were able to put into Haiti as many as 22,000 troops. Many of them, of course, were on shipboard, but really an enormous effort, together with the efforts from other countries. I mean, there were several other nations, including Canada, Nicaragua, and others, who sent people down outside the UN umbrella as well. MINUSTA, the UN forces, this is just the military side. They also have a civilian police side. They've got kind of a bump up in their numbers, but they're doing actually a very good job, and they're extremely multinational. Obviously, there are countries from the Western Hemisphere there, but there are outsiders as well. And these were the folks that took care of Haitian security. That was not the job of the U.S. Two remarkable things that we helped do. One is repair the airport. You probably remember the airport tower. Everything was completely destroyed, no power. Our special forces came in within 36 hours, restarted the airport within 2 hours. This was actually the control tower at the airport for a couple of weeks. But we were able to actually get in as many as 160 planes of a 24-hour period, as opposed to the Port-au-Prince Airport normally handles, 12 to 20. A completely destroyed port. But through some remarkable underwater construction and some barge systems, that port now is capable of handling about 2.5 times what it could handle before the earthquake. This is probably important to folks around the table. This is something we're very proud of. The fact that working with the private sector, working with NGOs, we're able to coordinate the donations of more than $36 million worth of supplies. And this is something that we think about every day. How can we work with the private sector, both profit and nonprofit, to kind of leverage what we do, okay, and make that greater. Just so people don't think that we have left Haiti and never coming back, I mentioned continuing promise. In fact, the Iwo Jima, large deck amphibious carrier for the Marines, this is sort of a helicopter aircraft carrier, if you will, is doing a long tour through the Caribbean, just started last week, is currently in Haiti, but will hit these other countries all the way to November. This was done consciously. It was done consciously because we know it's hurricane season, okay? So if we need some quick way to respond to hurricanes anywhere in this region, in the Caribbean, in Central America, we, for the next several months, will have the ability to do this. I was on this ship in Miami last week. Remarkable ship, remarkable group of Marines and sailors, very excited doing it. And it's not only U.S. military. There are NGO medical personnel aboard. There are medical personnel aboard from our partner nations in the region as well. And in fact, even though our task force has been disbanded, we now have right now New Horizons, which is actually headquartered in Gonaïves, Haiti. About 550 National Guardsmen from Louisiana are busy doing engineering projects and other humanitarian projects outside of Port-au-Prince in 8 or 10 different secondary cities. And if we think about all those accomplishments from DOD's point of view, these are the numbers, and you can read this as much as well as I can. Lots of patients treated during the Haiti response, lots of medevacs, lots of distribution of food. This is a number people aren't always aware of. U.S. military air evacuated more than 16,000 American citizens. That was the largest evacuation of Americans in peacetime ever. And this whole effort was the largest U.S. government response to a disaster outside our own borders in history, much greater than even the response to the Pacific tsunami several years ago. And that's why we do that. So I'm going to stop there, okay, and then take questions however you want to handle it. Yeah?